Hello, this is Dr. Robert Faust with Faust Bioagricultural Services in Independence, Oregon, and this is in the Willamette Valley. What I'd like to talk about today is the future of the world, and it's a lesson that we haven't learned, but history provides the example. Wealth is created from the soil. You move on to a new area like North America, for instance, and you're the breadbasket of the world. Well, that's happened in other locations. But eventually, we mine the soil, and it loses its structure, it breaks down, it won't drain, you get runoff, you get flooding. So over years of cropping, oxidizing the organic matter, and the organic matter is the food of the soil, provides the microbes, the fungi, the whole soil food web. There's millions of organisms, and the organic matter, bottom line, if you really want to get simple on this, the organic matter feeds the soil micro environment or the soil ecosystem, and that feeds the plants. And the plants also produce excess carbohydrates and feed the rhizosphere organisms, or the organisms that live in the root zone. It helps feed the plant helps to feed them. But it's a complex ecosystem, and it goes from fungi, which are the crucial producers of humic acids, humic substances. They need organic matter. Without organic matter, they starve, and the whole thing falls apart. You end up with a bacterial dominant soil instead of a fungal dominance. And bottom line, it's fungi that digest raw organic matter and create humic substances. The bacteria don't build soil. They do benefit the plant roots. They can produce plant growth regulating substances, or rhizosphere positive substances, that cause the plants to release more carbohydrates and feed them. But it doesn't really build soil. Only humus does, and that's concentrating carbon, which the plants absorb as carbon dioxide, and then decomposition by specific fungi convert that organic matter, which was carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, into humic substances in the soil, which are stable, but not totally stable, because the next season they start to oxidize and release nutrients to plants and animals and microorganisms. And the key indicator, bottom line on this, is the earthworm. Earthworm opens up channels in the soil. It helps digest organic matter. It increases nutrient availability. There's been books written on the subject. So earthworms have to be present. If earthworms aren't present, you got a problem. It's a breakdown lower down in the soil ecosystem. So, and then soils deteriorate, they get hard, and like I said, they harden up, you get runoff, you get flooding, and you get poor results, and you end up with a soil that's either flooded or too dry, or it cracks and shrinks, or it swells with water. You end up with root rot because you're fostering non-specific, root rot organisms, Phytophthora, cinnamoni, and a whole range of root rotting organisms, verticillium, you name it. Now, these are weak, unspecialized organisms that can appear when you don't have the rest of the soil ecosystem, which is the fungi, which produce antibiotics. There's a chemical warfare going on in the soil. So you want the soil microbes to be dominated by fungi. And that takes organic matter additions on a yearly basis, or humic substances additions on a yearly basis. So you can do one of two things. You can produce compost, And that takes time. It takes a good 2 years to produce a compost rich in humic substances. Or you can regularly add composted manure or other things on a regular basis, and then you have a constant production of humic substances. Now, if that's not available, I mean, like my grandfather's farm in Pennsylvania, most farms in the day where they had dairy cattle, they had pigs, they had sheep, they had chickens, and they grew feed, they grew their own feed, and they used the composted manure to do it. Okay, that's sustainable. And that's really how our ancestors farmed in North America, and still are in many cases. But those small farms were pushed to the side by large corporate industrial style agriculture. And so they went to monoculture. And that's the beginning of the end, monoculture, because it's just one crop after another, chemical fertilizers, rescue chemistry, over and over until the soil becomes so hard you have to put in artificial drainage, which isn't going to work because the top few inches of soil become sealed off. And so you're just kidding yourself. I see it out here in the Willamette Valley just yesterday, putting down plastic drain tubes all over the place because you get an inch of rain and you get standing water. And so they see that, or some salesman tells them, yeah, that's drainage. You need to put in this pretty expensive drainage system. But then you see what happens. The water's still on the surface because the soil structure is destroyed. There's no earthworms. They haven't created, and their tillage is create clods and then break them down to dust. So you end up sealing the surface. It doesn't matter, you increase the drainage. Might have been pretty good down there anyway, but they get talked into. Now, so the way to deal with this is to make sure you have earthworms. Okay, so that we're really getting basic here. So you have to feed the soil organic matter. Or my experiments with soils here in the Willamette Valley is if you don't have organic matter, you can use concentrated activated humic substances. Now these can be made from compost, vermicompost, particularly, mainly vermicompost is a source of humic substances. Biodynamic compost is, and humates, commercial humates, and these are derived from ancient organic matter deposits that have been broken down by fungi and bacteria to form concentrated form of humic acid. That's related to peat. So it starts as peat, which is just dead plants, and then it turns into more and more decomposition turns into humic substances. So this is mined. We have an activation and solubilization process so that it can be used as a liquid or a soluble dry and used as a foliar. And it makes all the difference. I mean, my paper on using humic substances in the Willamette Valley soils, the silt loam soils, it's your water deposited soils, vastly improve the texture and structure of that soil within 60 days. And by doing modern testing, microbial testing with local labs, we found that we vastly increased the fungal dominance in the soil. So, it was a very simple solution to a big problem. Using 10 to 30, 40 pounds of soluble full humics per acre. It's not a big cost, but it did turn around the microbial makeup of the soil, which it was the control groups were highly bacterial dominant and the treated was highly fungal dominant, and the soil structure went from, a brick, essentially, to a finely structured, friable soil that you would, that looks reasonable, versus a soil that if you water it and wet it, it turns into a brick that ends up cracking. So that's the situation. don't have to make a big deal out of it. That's just the facts that we know on the science behind humic substances. We used to, before the chemical fertilizer industry became dominant, about 100 years ago or so, the theory was the humus theory of plant nutrition, that humus breaks down and that's what feeds the plants. Well, that theory, was thousands of years, hundreds of years in the making until chemical fertilizers were developed, like ammonium nitrate, urea, etc., ammonium phosphate, chemical industries. And then they poo-pooed that and they discredited that idea. No. All you need is chemical salts and you're good. Well, it was a self-serving thing that is going to destroy the productivity and the wealth of this nation, because it's a temporary fix. It's not sustainable, because we still have the mentality that we can keep moving on. It's like mining, soil mining. Mining doesn't last. You mine something out and you move on and you find the next place. Well, that's sort of what that's definitely what agriculture was in this country. And now I'm like, 30 miles as the crow flies to the Pacific Ocean. So we're not really going any farther. So we've got to make it work here. And I'm telling you right now that the way to do it is addition of humic substances, organic matter, cover crops, nitrogen fixation. Or we can go back to some of the original farming practices where basically slash and burn, like the ancient Mayans. Some of the agricultural systems that have lasted for thousands of years. And that can be truly considered sustainable. And although they had their problems too, and I think politics brought the Maya down, the whole idea of conquest and so forth. But they overused their soils. I mean, every story in history is like this. Look at Ireland. Look at Scotland. It used to be forests. Look at it now. It's just heather. It's an acid-loving plant. And nothing else is going on there. All right? They had to come here. Okay? So the same thing will happen here. So you can either wait 20 years and let the forest and brush grow back, slash and burn, and then plant for 2 years, and then set it aside for another 20 years. Or you can have a mechanism to apply humic substances, either by your own compost or any compost you can get your hands on, which is impractical in our farming system. I hate to say it, but when you're farming a couple thousand acres of a seed crop or grain or orchards or vineyards, you're just not going to find that much compost. I mean, it's possible. I recommend it, but it's a lot easier to use a conventional fertilizer equipment and apply 30 to 50 pounds of full humic or full humic TM7, which has got the 7 trace elements that are normally missing that cause decline in crops. And that's going to solve the problem. It has, and it's not going to. We have 20 years of experience behind this. And it's difficult to get the message out because farmers are bombarded with messaging. And most farmers get their information from chemical dealers, field men. And then the university, which gets their grant money from the ag chemical industry. It does good stuff too, but I mean, that's how it works. And so me, I'm just another farmer, but with 50 years of experience and college degrees, and I'm telling you that there is a method, there is a way. And so my next YouTube will be on exactly how to pull it off and some of the examples that we've seen in the past. Thank you. This is Robert Faust with Faust Bioag Services, Inc. in Independence, Oregon, and the Great Willamette Valley. Used to be called the breadbasket of the world or the garden of the world. Check it out now. You got standing water out here. Okay, we'll talk to you later.